All right, so Erwan, you're working in contournement.
Contournement, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And Patrik, you're working in Make.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we have another conference on Make at 5:30, yeah?
That's correct. That's my colleague Shiran she's the head of marketing, and she will tell you a lot of interesting information about the brand and the rebrand that we were preparing for quite a while. So, yeah, that's a nice segue.
Awesome. Have fun, guys. See ya.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Before we start, I would like to ask a question. We would like to ask you a question. Who here, I think you have already heard this question, but let's repeat it. Who here, you can raise your hand if you are a coder or a technical person? Okay. Who considers himself or herself as a no-coder? Okay. And who does consider himself or herself as a non-technical person? Okay, minority. Interesting. So, I'm very glad to welcome today Sir Patrik Simek, who is the CTO and co-founder of Make. Make, for people who wouldn't know what it is, it's a no-code tool or visual programming tool that enables you to build many things without knowing how to code, but you will define it better than I would do. And I'm very glad because I'm kind of a Make fanboy as a member of the French no-code community, and that's a very powerful tool. And I have to say, I think that's becoming one of the most famous tools in no-code in the world. And also, I think that's one of the tools that succeeded in convincing many developers and tech people. So, first, I think, before you introduce yourself, maybe you can explain better than me what Make can do, what it is, and maybe tell us a story about a use case or something like this.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you very much for a nice introduction. So what is Make? Make is a no-code visual auto platform that originally, was called or named Integramat. We recently changed our name. And since the very beginning, we were focused on creating a platform for people to automate their daily routines in a no-code way. And the no-code means you actually don't have to understand the code to, set up the workflow that actually does the job for you. So with Make, we try to look at things slightly differently. So you can, in the product itself, you are connecting circles, which means like the actions or the things you want the platform to perform in a way like you click Lego bricks together, and in the end it works for you, it do the job for you. And so as a quick example, very recently we discovered there's a really smart guy. He's 17, studying at school, and he was so frustrated of having needing to access like multiple systems to get into the grades, to get into the homeworks and other pieces. And so he had this idea to create one unified interface where all the pieces, everything that's related to school would sit together for all the students. And so he had this idea, and he brought some vision, some first concepts of this interface to the leadership in the school, and they were so impressed they actually started to support him. And and then he realized, okay, but how can I actually connect the front end with all of those systems that are there in the school? And so he actually started to use Make for that. And the great thing is that he is not a coder, he is not a programmer, he is 17, and he was able to build a full-fledged product. And today, the whole school, all the students are using that. And since he has this entrepreneurship, inside of him, he's thinking about providing that to other schools as well. So, nice example.
Crystal clear. So now we know what Make is, what it does. You just illustrated it by an example. Maybe it's the moment when you can tell more about you and why you built Make. What is the story of Make? Where does it come from?
Okay, so me personally, I'm a developer, hardcore developer for more than 25 years. So JavaScript, Java, ActionScript back then. And, 10 years ago, it's actually where this idea was born. We were working on multiple projects, and back then there was like one very specific trend, and we started to see more and more the word API. And the API stands for, a language, something like a language that programs are communicating with each other. So I usually see like multiple people in the same room, everyone speaking different language, and you need to have someone who translate the communication between all of them. And so since there was a Facebook API, Twitter API, and more APIs in this consumer segment, not only in coding and enterprises. So we started to think about, hey, let's build something that's going to ease our work for us internally. And so we started to work on this tool. And since our previous job was a gaming industry, we tried to combine the playfulness and the easiness and the real-timeness and all of those fun concepts from game into a platform that we've been building mostly, I would say, overnight in the early phases. And after many iterations, and we had a chance to show this product to some of our friends and partners, we realized that that's something that we are not the only one who has the problem with, constantly reiterating on connecting systems via code. So back then we tried to, we implemented things like, registration, login, and all of that stuff that basically creates this platform or changes the platform into a self-service kind of platform. And so in 2016, we launched the product in the early phase. And since then, we basically started to grow and see more and more people getting on board, understand the platform. And what I still think is the most important, aspect why we were successful is the visual interface, which means we created something that's super tangible, that shows how the data are actually traveling through the system. It's not only about connecting; it's also about maintaining and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Okay, the main subject is 10 years later in the no-code game, but before talking about this subject, I have a question because. At Contournement, we care very much about making things understandable by non-tech people, technical things understandable by non-tech people. And for example, the way you explain the context about the APIs and what is an API, so many people talking in the same rooms, the people being services or tools, or I like this. And you talk in very metaphorical ways. Sometimes everything is about language. I know that you have, the word no code means some things, but I know that about defining make, you have a vision that is around language, cooperation. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, sure. So the way how this product is designed, you can think of it as like something like creating a code via visual language. So that's why we internally set ourselves to name it or call it a visual programming language. And the biggest advantage of this is like we are trying to connect those two words, like the code and the no code together. Because on one hand, code is something that's going to be there forever for us, because someone needs to code some abstraction to give someone else the power to use a no-code, right? And so that's one thing. And the other thing is there's so many things that you can do quite easily. You don't have to code it. There's a bubble for example, sending an email that gives you all the possibility to send the email without writing any code. But at some point, you need to have some business-specific logic or complicated feature implemented into the workflow, right? And so that's the moment where I think the devs are important part of this whole workflow, because they need to implement some low-level logic or algorithms that enhances the whole workflow. So, but for the business people or for the people who are not tech, it's all hidden behind this, visual, like a circle representation of an action. So the people who are mostly taking care about the no-code are still assembling logical circles, pieces together, while the code is hidden behind this barrier. And in the end, you can think of it as a communication layer between the devs and non-devs, because devs usually talk a different language. I've been building software for quite a while, so I remember how difficult it is to get the instructions how to build a product from someone who is in the business, right? Because you get the instructions, you start to build stuff, and then you have those iterations with the customer, and he's like, or she's like, yeah, that's not what I meant, and then we need to do some adjustments. So this is a nice way how to connect those two worlds together, because on one hand there's a specific logic that needs to be implemented by a code, but then those people who are not into code can finish the rest, the business logic.
I think you have begun to answer the next question, indeed, because with your vision, I think we can feel and hear a deep trend about what no-code or visual programming is becoming. So that's the moment where I ask the question, why we meet here. In the 10 past years, there have been a big trend about no-code tools adoption, more and more 100% cloud-based visual tools that enable you to make websites, web apps, automations, databases. And what's your analysis? What's your feeling? What's your look about the 10 past years in the communities of no-code, on the technologies of no-code, about also the movement? Because at Contournement we like to talk about the no-code movement, because that's technologies, that's usages, that's also humans. How could you?
So the no-code, it can be many things, right? What we see, like where the movement is quite strong, is in the front-end kind of building, which means we have a lot of tools like the Bubble and Wix and others that are like here with us for quite a while, where people can really build their front end in just a very short time. And there are even applications for building like a mobile interfaces in a second. And we also saw those kind of database kind of platforms like Google Sheets. It's probably not the best, but a lot of people are using it as a basic for databases. You have Airtable, for example, which is a great example of super advanced no-code database. And like those two pillars are missing this one very important pillar, and that's the glue that connects that with all the other systems, right? Because previously there was RPAs or complex solutions that has been tailored to specific enterprises or customers, doing everything for them. Today the trend is rather to use smaller SaaS services that are specific to those fields, and then you have this integration / automation / connecting layer that connects all those pieces together. So you have like all of those three pillars together are basically a platform that gives you all the possibilities to build the applications, the whole systems.
And I think one of the trends, because I think we share a vision, that's you and us at Contournement, that everything in no-code, in visual programming, is a question of level of abstraction. For example, to build web apps, you have software with Airtable. In one day we can lead some people, empower some people to make something. But there is also on the other side, for example, WeWeb or Webflow that are much more advanced tools with deeper control about what you are doing, as that's more precise, and that's I think in automation you have found kind of a professional level of abstraction. That's not a toy you are developing, I think. And do you think that in the future or in the past years, this trend is something that we can feel? Is there a specialization of tools, different tools? How do you see this? And,
so I like you said that Make is actually a professional tool. I think that's very much the true, but not in a way that it can only be used by professionals. It's more like it's a tool that gives their customers, the users, the developers, all the powers on tools they need to build professional solutions. But still, the onboarding curve is quite, short, which means you can get into creating a simple stuff very quickly. And if there's like one thing that I would like to maybe mention in related to that is that usually in coding, it's I still see like the process being split into three like high-level parts, which means you are coding the application itself. Then you are actually testing the application, which means you're testing whether it works. You debug the code, step by step, and then you have a production or code running in production. So it's like three different stages that, especially the last one, is sometimes very tricky to get right. While in Make, the way how we are trying to abstract all of that, and there's one thing that all of those three pieces has in common, and that's the consistent visual interface. Because when I'm starting building something, apart from, I can start just by putting one thing there, click run once, I immediately get the response, so I feel like, okay, it's working, I'm adding another part, and it supports this iterative approach, right? So that's super cool, but what's also great is that with every run, with every execution that happens on the platform, I can immediately just see what's happening there, what data has been transferred, and it can actually like even also apply full text search on top of our scenarios, our integration, so it can help me find where exactly this transaction ID was processed in the automation. So that's like this kind of testing part, and then we have this like a production part, which means the code is actually running, and everything that happens in Make is all logged, which means you can access it in a way that it looks exactly the same like if you were designing it. So which means it's still the same UI, still the same mind map or the representation of the connectors, and you can see exactly what data has been transferred. So this thing, to me, as a developer, brings so much value that every time I'm like thinking about, okay, there's a new thing that I need to build. Do I have to code it, or is it better for me to rather use a no-code tool because I get, debugging, monitoring, logging, all of those features basically out of the box for me.
And what I liked, because we discussed a bit before, you evoked 𝗜ঝ𝘁𝗲𝗿𝗃𝗲𝗃, this principle that that kind of tools where what you see is what you get in real time. And we talked about 𝗜ঝ𝘁𝗃, what you see is what is happening. And I think that's, I talked about metaphors because, there can be temporal metaphors, animation can be active metaphors, spatial metaphors. And you said something that you got a big inspiration about video games, because, some people, sometimes they see, I don't know, Doric or something to make a website. Visually, they say, that's fun. But you succeeded, I think, in making something that can be a bit serious, automating, that's not for mortals. And yeah, is one of your goals making it, like playful, like, do you want to go more in that video game direction, so to speak, and material consistent, as if you could take and touch all the components?
Yeah, I think you're completely right. It's especially in the early phases when we started to work with all of those prototypes, and we got to a phase where we had actually the data really just jumping between those circles, in front of our eyes. The animation where you feel like, okay, this file is actually jumping, doing those steps. It was so cool, this feeling like, okay, I know what's happening on the screen. I know what's happening with my data, and I know why the condition was evaluated this way, because it's just all visual. And this is something that especially helps people who are non-devs, because as a dev, you need to think about variables, you need to think about conditions and functions and all of that stuff. While here, it's all, we are trying to make it tangible. So you almost feel like you want to touch it. You want to see, hey, I want to touch this file and see what's there, and then just put it like in the movies like Minority Report and those kind of science fiction stuff. But you never know. Maybe we will get there one day.
Maybe a make with virtual reality one day. We'll see.
Yeah, but those concepts from gaming, basically in games, the game is trying to attract you from the very beginning. It's trying to give you a quick feedback whether you are actually on the good path or not. Those concepts, even though it might sound weird because that's the gaming concept, but she's providing that feedback to someone who is creating such a serious thing like automation, and we are powering super serious stuff sometimes. It's fun, and it definitely also like changes how people perceive the platform. Okay, I'm just not going to code another boring stuff. Let's just enjoy it. Let's just have some fun with the tool, like we do with the games. So yeah.
And as I said, I and Alexis really like your tool. So maybe we're too benevolent sometimes, but I know that in France we see that there are very different type of profiles who use this tool. Notably, we have an e-learning course on it, and very different type of people use it. They like it also. So even if we are benevolent, I think we are kind of pragmatic, and we very rarely have negative feedbacks about something in Make. But yeah, I had 2 sentences at the same time. I don't know why. So my question was, we see sometimes some freelancers, some small businesses, some big companies or some people in big companies using Make. And I think in France we have a very, very powerful no-code movement, very dynamic. And we have many French tools like Kezzar, Udoo tools, Time Tonic and all. And each time we meet them, we ask them, who is your target? Do you have a particular target, or do you have, I don't know, geographical targets or geographical trends about the communities who use Make? Do you have some trends about that mainly SMBs, freelancers who use you? Do you have some any trends, or feelings about it?
So let's talk about geographical trend. The trend is that we serve users from 185 countries. So that's like, and that's of course the wide range of customers we have. I would say that the most frequent are like France, US, Israel. So those are definitely the biggest region that are looking into automation, and I would say also like thinking differently about this area of digital transformation, which is now becoming a big thing. And some of the other countries, I think, will realize that slightly later. And when it comes to companies, and we started this product mostly designed for other entrepreneurs, SMBs, smaller enterprises, because this is where we actually get in touch with those people very closely. And also you have a luxury of having a user and the customer in one person, which is not usually the case in the enterprises. And that was a huge, inspiration for us, because we were in touch, we discussed what are the needs of those customers, why do they need that, and we try to evolve the product to support those needs. What we see today, as the companies are actually become bigger and bigger, some of our customers are actually transforming into enterprises, and we have more and more customers coming also from enterprises as well. So it's definitely a slight shift in how we need to focus on things, because the systems are different and the systems are usually legacy. So we need to think about, okay, how can we connect with the legacy system? With the enterprises, you have things like you need to take care about auditing, granular access controls, and there's just much stuff that we need to add. But the cool thing is that everything that we add to the product, it always goes to all the branches, which means the enterprises, smaller businesses, and everyone. And it also is somehow forcing us to keep the product simple, because it's super easy to overwhelm product with buttons and checkboxes and everything. But since we are targeting all of those deployments with one code, it gives us, it's challenging stuff for us, but it's, in the end, the best possible product for all of those markets.
And I have to tell you, in some minutes, we will take questions. So if you have some questions, just think about it, prepare, and breathe. And one of the users of Make is the Web Today festival. You know, Amandine, one of the co-organizers, just developed a very strong scenario with Make. I think that to manage the Wi-Fi, generate some passwords, but yeah, you know, she has, you are now maybe, I don't know the word in English. There are some Make 0 and 1s just flying over you. That's what I meant. And also, yeah, as I said, I had two ideas at the same time, but yeah, about the ecosystem of tools, I talked about the French tools that are very dynamic. Make has a very, I think, a very big strength about APIs, but you have particular strategies about to, I don't know, to work with editors or maybe some community tactics or.
You mean if we have a strategy on how we actually adding connectors to all that stuff, like to
to add connectors or to offer to create. You're an editor. You want to create your connector, your native connection to Make. How can I do if I am Kezzar or you do tools?
Yeah, so the connector, you know, as at the very beginning, I was creating this analogy that you have the room with multiple people inside. So with every person, we need to create a connector. That's to basically the way how we make sure that we communicate with the right language. So I think so far we have like 1,200 connectors pre-built. And what's great because the platform itself also empowers anyone to build their own connectors. So if we end up in the situation that the system that we need to connect is not there in the platform available today, there's a low-code, no-code, but low-code way how to actually implement or like to polyfill or to implement this missing connector by yourself, which means it's a since APIs are usually just some addresses with some output parameters and some, let's say, type conversions, you define a specific JSON structure where you say, hey, this is an endpoint here, there are some input parameters of some data type, and you usually define what's the authorization method to that endpoint. And you do the same thing for the response from the service, and that's it. You just then choose a color of the circle, you choose an image for the circle, and that's it. It's available for anyone to use. And they can also decide whether it's going to be a private connector, which means only to those customers, whether it's going to be a connector for shared with other companies, or whether it's going to be publicly available on our cloud for anyone to use.
Okay, and the last question, because as Pierre said, Sheeran will make a talk here in about 1 hour about the evolution of Make that you made lately. So we won't talk about this here, but yeah, that's a very classical conclusive question. What would be your ambition for Make, I don't know, in 10 years or like that? Because the name Make is very ambitious. That's what my starting point.
And that's why we chose Make, because it's super ambitious. And it definitely is the best name that matches with what's our vision and expectations for the next few years. So if I can just explain the future in very short, I see Make as a platform, as a tool, as basically your best friend when it comes to converting ideas into reality. So whenever you have an idea that involves application building or connecting something in digital world, it would be so great if Make is the first thing that comes to your mind, because it has all the tools that you need. It has this visual language that gives you the power to prototype things quickly. This visual language also gives you a super nice way to document things because it's self-documentary. It gives you a power to collaborate with other people who are different nationality, different language, but still we all understand what's happening there in front of our eyes.
I hope the worldwide and American competitors got the message, Europe is coming. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any question in the audience? Yes. Is there a microphone in the audience? Yes.
Hello.
Hey.
I was wondering, you talked a lot about the video games and the onboarding and the education of users, because you have users with a lot of different skill sets. I was wondering how the tech team and the product team thought about that, and what was the process between like the developers, the product team, and the user feedback?
You mean, how did we manage to like bring all the people from engineering product to the same vision?
To build the onboarding and to educate the user so they could get a success real fast.
Can you maybe try to say it again once time, because I'm maybe too much new.
No worries. So as a video game, you know, like video games, they get you to a point where you're having fun right away. And you mentioned that that's what Make tries to do as well, so that very fast you build something and you're successful with the product. I was wondering how you got to that stage, how you thought about it as a company. I'm assuming that there was a lot of back and forth between the product team and the developers. I'm assuming that there was a lot of user feedback, and I'm wondering how you organized that.
Okay, I think I get it. We started as a company that has been definitely much smaller than we are today. And today we have those concepts of product and engineering and teams and everything. But back then we were only a few people who shared the same passion for building, nice and fun products. And so this thing create an experience that is playful, visual, almost like a game. It was not something that we put on the roadmap as a checkbox. It was something that happened automatically because we were having fun during the development. And since the original company, Integromat, was not invested by external investor, we had all the time and all the control over what we are doing. And I think that's what led us to this moment, this position.
Any other question? Observation? Yes.
Yeah, can you stand up, please?
Hi, thank you for your intervention. 𝗶្脾𝘁𝗲𝗿𝘃𝗲𝗀. I would like to know, with your experience, when you are managing a huge amount of data.
Can you please speak up a bit?
Yeah.
With your own experience as a company, are you able to manage huge amount of data? Like when you have like 60,000 different objects in a table, and you need to display them in a front office, for example. Have you any experience of the efficiency for Make to display this data, to manage, to crunch? Because we are spending a lot of time to optimize all our requests, and I would like to know what is your experience with Make on optimizing data, showing.
I'm just thinking if it's correct, is it possible to maybe meet out after the event?
Okay.
Because this is a super complex question. I have so many questions to add.
There is time for a last question, if you want. Yes.
Thanks a lot for this conference. I just would like to know if you have some example of public administration around the world who built a connector with Make and who allow other companies or other institution to use their connector.
You mean like if the French government could make connection?
Yes, and you maybe have, I never seen connectors from France government or institution on Make, but maybe you have some abroad example from other countries.
So the question was about the example of something that we built available. So, did you get the question?
No, I was
I'm
just
sorry, I have a
qualifying the
really hard
question.
time to hear that.
No, I think that's about, I think the question of do any government or public instance use Make to create a connection to 𝗵𝘵𝗽𝗫, for example, their services? Because, for example, you have open data Gouv in France, so that many data can be in open data. I think the question was about do you have some public, forces or things like that who use Make and.
Yeah, I think. I just think we do have such a public examples of how to create those connectors. I just really have a hard time to understand the question.
There's private companies who decide to make connector, like Airtable made a connector on Integromat. Is there sometimes government institution? In France, we have, for example, API from the tax administrations. And is there institution in some countries who decided to build connectors in Make?
Yeah, I think I got it. To be honest, I don't have an answer for that at this moment because I just cannot check, but I guess that there's definitely one for our government in Czech because that's the one that I'm using as well. So that's for sure. But those connectors are usually built by our partners because they're specific to those regions. So they are usually kept hidden from the public, wide public.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's time.
Thank you.